Hi, everybody. This is Hondo Carpenter from the Las Vegas Raiders Insider Podcast, of course, from Sports Illustrated's Fan Nation Raiders Today. I'm joined by the guy right here right there, I guess. I get turned around, forgive me on video, right there, who is one of my dearest friends on the planet. He is an exceptional journalist. He is a tremendous lawyer, has his own law firm down in Atlanta, Savannah area of Georgia. He is one of the best people that I know, and he's a man that I trust. And I'm going to tell you, the longer you live, my father said, you keep your circle of trust very, very small. And I trust him immeasurably. And that is the one and only, the great John Shop. John, good to have you, friend.
It's great to be back. It was nice to get a little visit in to Las Vegas again and be surrounded by a lot of Raiders gear, Raiders stores, of course, Raiders vibe all over the place. And then, hello, 2024 NFL, starting with the foot on the gas.
So, John, I want to get into today the business of the NFL. We're going to talk a lot of Raiders. And so if you're a Raider fan, most of you are Raider fans listening, trust me, we're going to get to something very specific, but we got to start at the shell before you get to the nut inside. You watch free agency start, billions of dollars get spent. Then you watch how 5 minutes after the deadline, they're announcing deals, not, hey, this guy's going there, but parameters of deals. Clearly, we all know everybody was talking before the clock struck. So the reality, John, is the business is good in the NFL. There's an old adage, you always follow the money, and the money says the NFL is alive and vibrant.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible when you look at what's happened to the size of the salary cap, as we've talked about before, and now you see it in person, and really the acceleration of the game. They've got a lot of things going the right way, which just continue to add dollars. Again, we probably should credit the NFL pretty good job handling the timing of introducing legal gambling to their sport and accepting it. Had they done it maybe 10 or 15 years ago, the technology may not have been there to keep it as secure and relatively smooth so far. That has brought an enormous amount of interest in the sport. There's no shortcoming of it. It's not like people have said, oh, there's gambling now in that sport, I'm walking away. Hasn't happened. They've been able to negotiate and manage the climate around them and have just continued to climb towards the mountain. You know, the idea that this climb gets a lot steeper when you're at the peak of the mountain doesn't really seem to affect the NFL. There's not a whole lot that's slowing down. There's a lot that's moving forward. There's a lot that the sport can do to make their product and game even better. We have talked about some of those things, and we have hit some of them right on the head. We know that there's going to be some evolution of the schedule. We've even mapped out the magic number of 6 to come. But when you look at the dollars flying around, these are not speculative dollars. These are dollars these teams know they have, they can count on, and they're ready to send. The money in the NFL is jumping pretty exponentially. That is a very good thing. And the public out there is saying, we want more. We're going to practically turn the first day of free agency into some kind of football holiday. The demand is out of this world. Really good time to be a player. Really good time to be something like 28 years old and a defensive tackle, just for example.
Isn't that the truth? And John, that takes us to our next thing. At no time in NFL history has a salary cap management been more key to franchise success. And I got to share something with you. I was talking to a recently retired NFL executive. This was his first year out of the game. And I said to him, we were talking when I was down in Cabo San Lucas, and I asked him, what would you say is, and I thought he would say quarterback, but the most important part now of a winning franchise, and he was part of a franchise that won a lot. And he said to me, salary cap management. And I almost fell out of my chair. And I said, what? And he goes, it doesn't, the rest doesn't matter anymore, because if you don't have salary cap management, you can't keep people. If you don't have salary cap discipline, you can't keep people. And he said that there is absolutely no bigger key to a franchise's success. He goes, second is quarterback. But first is you have to have salary cap management and discipline. Does that not floor you to hear that coming from a very successful executive?
I think it does a little bit because that's how powerful and important it's become. It was always in the mix, but now you're hearing it basically say this is kind of taking things over. And if we step back a second, which is what we like to do on this show, going around the NFL from a Raider perspective, you see how many teams that look like they were right on the edge or so close. And then it's like Charlie Brown with the football getting taken away at the last second, or the rug getting pulled out from a franchise. They get shredded because of a salary cap situation. That is what it looks like is going on in Buffalo. It looks like a window is all of a sudden closed because of that. That is partially what's gone on in Minnesota, where they had a beautiful window and stuck with Mike Zimmer too long and started to crush it. And now that window looks like it's gone also. When you think about the hyper tightly packed 53-man roster that's too tightly packed, we all know it's already too tightly packed.
Right.
And you think about the business interest, the predominant business interest of these athletes. I really don't care what they say during the season relative to their business interest. I care what they do, for example, like the first day of free agency. So many of them, when they step back, think of this as a business first. That puts such enormous stress on the salary cap management. For us old folks, we go way to the back at the start of the salary cap when you had the 49ers doing things to manage the cap and carbon policy and other cap experts. And we didn't think that much of it. We were understating it. It's a huge deal. It's become a bigger deal when you look at teams like the Broncos that look like they've blown a giant hole in their ship for a couple of years with the Russell Wilson deal. You get an idea of just how big the impact is. You've got to set the table with the salary cap managed in such a way that you can either keep your roster together or add the pieces that you need. And I think on a yearly basis, we see teams and we see windows come to a crashing close just because of that. So it is the right thing to do. You hate to say it because so many people are just into what's going on the field, on the game. They're not interested in betting on salary cap management, for example, or playing fantasy salary cap. It's critically important. And we see teams who are their own good or their own bad, who are in a really good position cap wise to start this free agency period. We see others that are going to get partially bailed out by the cap expanding so much. And we also see some that are crashing. When you see what's going on in Buffalo, when you see the situation they've got with the cap, ooh. And then, of course, when you look around the Raiders division and you see what's over there in Los Angeles / Southern California / San Diego as a competitor in their division, you think we're in pretty good shape compared to the Chargers, aren't we? It's fascinating. And there's probably more focus on the cap during this start of salary cap period than there is any time during the NFL calendar.
So, John, this brings us to a very important point I wanted to get into. It's very Raider specific. When Dave Ziegler arrived, the Raiders were in terrible shape. And I understand he's gone. I get it. It's gone. That's the way of the game. And I'm not saying this to say, woo, Dave Ziegler, although he's my friend and I think he did a very good job. Raider fans owe him a big thank you for the success of today. But I say today that the free agency is already well started, but I mean, the present state of the franchise today. And I think one of the reasons of hope is Tom Telesco is a lot like him, very salary cap discipline, no emotional spending. We're not going to be cheap. When I say we, I'm referring to their voice. We're not going to be cheap, but we are going to be frugal. If a guy's worth 10, we're not paying 10.5, but we're also not offering him 8. We're going to step to the pump, make our best offer, and let people know, hey, we're willing to pay you. Talk about, if you would, please, maybe the legacy of Dave Ziegler, because he's going to be lumped with Josh, and I think you have to separate them and look at what he did. Am I being fair?
I think so in one way. When a coach and a GM come in together, they're completely lumped together. They're looked at as together, even inside their own buildings most of the time. When they split, they start to be separated a little bit, and it can take a little while, but at a certain point, they are really looked at independently. You can go back to look at Jerry Reese's work with the Giants. You can look at Ron Wolf's work,
Good one.
look at Bill Polian's work, etc. Sean Payton, Mickey Loomis, etc. So there is a separation there. What you look at there is, you ever go into a job, you recruit, you go into a job, it looks fantastic, looks like the facility's great, looks like everything's terrific. You get inside and then you find like a back closet where everything's massively disorganized, and you realize the job you came in, you thought you were doing, we're going to start here and do this work there and build this foundation there. You actually have to start over here because it's such a mess, and it's tying one arm behind your back and taping your hamstring to the wall, and you're kind of stuck. So you have to extract out of there. You have to eat dead cap money. You have to find a way to look a little bit further ahead than you'd like to, past next season, if you will, to position the franchise to have a chance to have some cap space to maybe reevaluate things. And yeah, it's one of those things, I'm sure, that all the GMs would do in one of those off the record articles, or off the record. Yeah, I mean, it would have to be an article. It's kind of a hidden or lightly discussed massive responsibility. The GM job is, when you get into wherever, where are the closets that have been left totally disorganized, and where are the, it's not really a ticking, it's not really a ticking time bomb. It's like one of those guns that shoots out the cash. Where's the loaded cash guns that are going to fire off and explode through the salary cap, and how do I work my way out to avoid those? And I think it's, at this time of year, great for everybody to reset their mind on who's doing what within an organization. An owner is going to own. If you're going to look for emotional moves to spend or draft guys, or just think of some of the stuff the worst owners in the sport have done, whether it's Carolina or Washington or other owners have been making pretty large decisions and mistakes, they are going to act emotionally. When you think about players are going to play. Players are going to play. That's their job. And then when the season ends, it's the business responsibility that seems to dominate them. So everybody is in the lane that they're in. The general manager really has to do that work. Who else is going to do it? It does benefit the franchises that can stay disciplined, smart, and focused more often than not, and then hopefully have really good judgment. We look, just a small example, look at the wide receiver situation in Green Bay. The wide receiver situation in Green Bay looked uncertain. It looked understaffed. It looked undermanned. They got apparently some of the right guys and have done a good bit to develop them, and they've got a nice chunk of cap space where, had they gone out and spent big for somebody, it would have been gone. This is a time of year, along with the draft, to see a little bit past just that draft pick. And maybe it's difficult because we're not inside all these buildings, but maybe there's also a little bit of a salary cap advantage or leverage that this team has got by drafting this guy. Quarterbacks, running backs, we know they're coming, but sometimes another position group. I think what Green Bay did is going to benefit them here in the next couple of years as kind of a standout.
So I want to go back to the Raiders, because we praised Dave Ziegler, but now we need to praise Tom Telesco. I got a text the other day after the first day, late at night, and it was from an NFL executive that I just said, "Hey, give me your thoughts on what the Raiders did." And he said, "A+ for Tom Telesco." And he talked about this, the Christian Wilkins deal. They were very disciplined in how they paid him. I mean, the guy's one of the top defensive tackles in all the NFL. A lot of people thought he was the best defensive free agent, or at the top. They get a good deal with him. They pay him less than Chris Jones, but they're selling him on there's no state income tax in Nevada, so really you're getting paid more than him. They save that little bit. When they look at some of the guys they let go, and they say, well, we understand that, but we know exactly where our point is. Dave Ziegler impressed a lot of people when he was with the Bolts. the family did a lot of the contracts, so their salary cap hell wasn't Telesco's fault. Talk to me about your initial impressions of Tom Telesco with the Raiders, please.
Well, he looks a little more organized, and he looks little less thrown off or shaken up by being the general manager of the Chargers. There's a lot of things that people inside the sport can't say, won't say. It's not in their business interest to say, including a guy that was just the general manager of the Chargers. But it looks like a little bit of a disorganized mess over there. So he might have been hamstrung a little more than we even thought. So he did a good
Yep.
job of managing a bad situation and obviously professionally bouncing back really, really well. It's too soon to tell. No downs have been played. They won't be played for a while. But when you look at Wilkins, what it looks like the Raiders are getting is a guy that is about to hit his absolute prime, an impressive player that can affect what the offense is doing on the other side. You're going to have a compound issue when you go against the Raiders' front four now. So this is a pretty bold start. It was not a move looking from a wider perspective. It was not necessarily one I was expecting or looking to see happen. And boom, it happens right away. It happens what sounds like you don't get there to sign him for that dollar value that early without some organized thought and preparation. So Telesco to me so far looks a little more organized and prepared. He looks focused. When you go back to the videos from the combine, it doesn't look like he's shaking or trying to figure it out as he goes along. Doesn't look like he's got an overbearing owner or a coach that is looking to be the general manager also. It's a good sign for now, and I'm excited to see what they do next. I'm also excited to see maybe if there's a surprise or two that they let a player go that everybody's thinking would have been part of the next phase, the new really start of the Telesco Pierce era. But right now, pretty impressive. This is a big signing at a position of absolute need when you are in the division with Patrick Mahomes.
John, we're up against the break, but I want to do one last question. Obviously, when deals like these are being announced moments after it starts, we know what's going on before. We know the conversations. Does the NFL need to just get rid of the shut up and just go back and say, okay, 10 days after the Super Bowl, you can begin to do your deals? I love it. I love the business of it. I'm enjoying all the fun, but is it almost a mockery, or do you leave it the way it is just because it's fun and everybody's loving it?
It's almost a mockery. This is why we get along so well, folks. We have the same ideas, sometimes don't even talk about them. I was thinking about this on the plane ride back actually for a second. What's the right thing to do here? Well, the right thing is you've got the Super Bowl, the celebration, and then how long until it goes? You know, it wasn't that long ago. I remember that Rex Ryan was driving up to people's houses, at like 11:30 at night, waiting for it to hit midnight. And there's been some changes and some evolution. I think probably a good idea to go ahead and give people a couple of weeks after the Super Bowl, maybe 2 or 3, and then boom, let's start this thing. So maybe it should be moved up, not dramatically. I don't think it should be like the day after the Super Bowl. Maybe a couple weeks sooner. Maybe the start of March is a better idea. March 1st is a round number. But yes, what the NFL should do is continue to refine this, move it back a little bit, but of course, don't step on the Super Bowl because
Or the combine.
Yeah, well, yeah, or the combine because again, everybody's not in the Super Bowl except the final two. So a lot of those fans and people, they'd be ready to go and start eating on next year right away. There's a right way to probably figure out when to put this relative to the Super Bowl and the combine. It probably needs a little tweak. I'm agreeing with you once again.
All right. Well, listen, I got to tell you, I was talking to an executive and we were discussing this, and he goes, "Here's the problem. And he was referring to the league, have done such a great job of making each part such huge news." And he said something to me, John, you're going to love. He goes, after the Super Bowl, it involves all 32 teams again. And he goes, they like keeping combine, free agency, draft, OTAs, mini camp, just allow 6 months of everybody, oh, we got a chance.
Know what
All
that
right, he's
is?
the great.
You know what that is? That's a wave. It comes up and crashes. The wave goes back out and crashes. They do a great job at keeping those waves going. Nobody else does it in entertainment. And that those what you just described are those waves. They don't want to screw them up. They've done a great job of setting them up, and they do a pretty good job of refining them. This one needs just a little push.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. I have had my disagreements with Roger Goodell, but what a tremendous job the NFL has done in marketing themselves. If I was to become commissioner of hockey, baseball, NBA, all of them, the first thing I'm doing is I'm going to the NFL. Do you remember years ago the NHL hired Gary Bettman, and I don't remember where they. I think they hired him from the NBA.
They did.
Okay, I remember saying at the time, I'm shocked more people don't go to the NFL and try to poach their top people because they're missing it. The NFL expansion, they let everything take time and brew their network. I just tell you, the NFL has done the absolute best. All right, now next week, John, we got a ton to talk about. I can't wait to get to that. Stay on the line. I want to talk to you, but he is the one and only, the terrific, the great, my buddy, John Shop. Remember, follow me on Twitter when you go to @Hondo Carpenter. Follow me when you go to Instagram @Hondo SR. John, tell everybody real quick, what is your handle on Twitter?
At JP Spartan.
@JP Spartan. And remember, folks, please, please, please like, share, get the word out, enjoy it. We'll see you at si.com/NFL/Raiders.